This episode of We Are Libertarians is brought to you by Audible.com. Enjoy one free audiobook courtesy of We Are Libertarians. Choose from more than 100,000 audiobook titles, including works by Ron Paul, Walter Block, Murray Rothbard, and the Cato Institute. Audible.com also has audio of radio and TV programs and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. You can get the Audible app on any mobile device or download the audio to your computer. Go to audibletrial.com/WAL or head to WeareLibertarians.com and find the link to get one free month of Audible today. Welcome to We Are Libertarians for this week. I am your host, Chris Spangle. To my right is Gregory Lenz.
Hello, hello.
Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
I'm a little discombobulated because you're well-mic'd with good technique.
I am doing my best. I've been practicing day and night to get this thing perfect.
Practicing in front of the mirror?
Yep.
With a phallic object right up against your mouth?
Well, I didn't say I didn't enjoy the practice.
Right.
Did you put a camera on you just for the hell of it?
There's a pay site.
Okay.
And then to his right, that voice that you hear is the ever-evaporating Daniel Peffers. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
You took a job at FedEx, and you're wasting away before our very eyes.
I know.
So you look great.
Yeah, I've got the most physical job at FedEx, so... yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Although the hair, we might need to do something about the hair. It's getting a little bit party in the back, business in the front.
yeah. I'm aware of that. I will fix that at some point.
I'm a fan.
Gena likes it. That voice you hear is the queen of Weird Libertarians.
There's a fancy word for loser.
How dare you?
You mean the madam.
Right.
Okay.
Gena
acceptable.
Martinez, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Oh, good. And you seem like you're in a chipper mood today.
I am fantastic. Let's do
right.
this.
Wow.
Let's do this.
Write down the time, Spangle.
I know. I didn't write down the time the last two times, so if any curses made it in, I apologize.
Shockingly, you have been the main culprit of the cursing lately.
I'm so proud of that.
I know. Well, Gena's been elsewhere, and so I felt like I needed to honor her memory.
Maybe we could make a special explicit podcast for We Are Libertarians.
I'm waiting for listener feedback when I say this. I'm tired of editing out the curses. I just would rather not take the time to do it. If you feel strongly that you'd like to hear curses or not like to hear the curses, message the Facebook page or send me a note at Spangle at We Are Libertarians, because I just would rather not edit it. We're all adults here, right? We don't have 12-year-olds listening to this.
Well, I mean...
We barely have anyone listening to this, let alone the youth.
We have 12 listeners to this.
Hey, we're up to dozens and dozens an episode.
I'm so proud of
Okay,
us.
so a gross or so.
Right. A baker's dozen last week.
Nice.
But that's just because it was Creighton. Well, last week we were going to record with Professor Walter Block last Monday when the snowstorm of all snowstorms hit the Indianapolis area where we record out of.
Some may even say a snowpocalypse.
Snowpocalypse, a polar vortex hit us.
The Canadian invasion.
Right, finally.
So proud.
The albino brain chiggers from the north finally flew in.
The what?
That's, you heard me.
Uh-huh.
So we're
He's a little... He says what, as in he's incredulous that
Right.
you actually said that.
So we will talk to Professor Block on Monday. Monday at 4 o'clock, everybody. We'll be returning to the couch to record a second episode in as many days. So we want to make sure that we get you 2 episodes so you're not missing us too much. But, it was the first time in Indianapolis history that the mayor of Indianapolis made it illegal for anyone to drive on the roads of Indianapolis. You, sir, Dan Peffers, are resident anarchist. Well, you're the anarchist when Maya's not here, and then she's like turbo anarchist. So,
No, she's just off-putting anarchist.
She's a myarchist.
Myarchist.
Myarchist. I like that.
These public streets, I guess they're owned by the public, which equals the government, right?
Not us, clearly, because
Right.
we couldn't drive on what we owned.
Right. So what is everybody's thoughts on the mayor banning us from driving on the city streets in the middle of we had a foot of snow and we had sub-zero temperatures, like down to -10, and it was almost impassable, despite the fact that I made Greg Lenz drive me home on Monday, which we'll get into later.
And it was not voluntary.
No.
It was very forceful.
It's because they couldn't call a cab after they were done.
Well, I have a new job. I work for the Bob and Tom Show, and we have to be in there by about 5:30 in the morning. And our first show back after the Christmas break was Monday the 6th. And there were several things that I had to do that morning, and I had to go in, and so I braved it. I violated the law like a real anarchist and drove my way into the radio station, and it was terrifying to say the least. I mean, there really was no reason to be on the roads, but the show must go on. I consider fart jokes to be a public service.
It is.
And so...
just think of all those morning commuters who were blessed by your...
By my social media skills, because I'm the web director, so I clearly needed to go in. And I went involved.
That job can't be done from home.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, I voluntarily went in. They were like, when I got there, they're like, what the hell are you doing here? You could have just remoted in. We need you to update Facebook from here.
Yeah,
so
I'm getting more confused. But was this just an act of defiance?
No, there was.
Then it was kind of stupid of you.
Well, I wasn't able to remote in, so I wasn't able to do certain things because things had reset over break. Actually, over the weekend, because I had gone in on Friday, and so we had lost internet power. We had lost power, so I had to go in to reset a couple things for the paying customers. But when I went out to leave, my car didn't start. And so I'm like, great, because it was -10, and the car just said, I've had enough.
I quit.
It's almost 10 years old. It's a real POS. It's
taking a day off.
It's a pre-socialism Chevy Cobalt 2006. And so I was stranded there. There was AAA wasn't doing any service calls, and so I'm just sitting there, and so I get in the group, and I'm like, guys, I may have to sleep at the radio station. And my hero, Greg Lenz, says, I'm 10 minutes away. I'm not doing anything. As long as I can get out, I'll come get you. And so he came out and drove me home, and thank goodness we didn't die in a car accident.
Actually, the roads weren't terrible when we came down here.
Yeah, they weren't horrible. There was 3 inches of ice and snow packed on the ground, but as long as you were, slow and steady and you didn't do anything stupid, you were all right.
Yeah, it was actually pretty safe.
Yeah.
I got a 4-wheel drive. I ended up rescuing a kitty.
What? Why?
I got a buddy in the military who has a cat that he left abandoned when he moved, and he called me and, Gena, my cat hasn't eaten. I'm really hurting. And yeah, okay.
How long's he been gone?
Right, 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, like a dip, Gena's like, okay, I'll defy all laws and come save a cat. So I did.
You will not take our roads.
2.5, 3 feet of snow on this alley, and he's like, no, come on to the back. So I did. I drove my four-wheel drive right up in it like it was nothing.
So we clearly, I had business to do. Greg had to take me home. We were all out on the roads on Monday in violation of the law. It would have been a $500 fine had we been ticketed.
We're rebels.
I will say that for the next 2 or 3 days, there was really no reason for most people to leave. I mean, it was if the city hadn't shut down, if all the schools hadn't closed, like it was like 900 closings, which is a huge amount of closings here. IPS, for the first time in history, was closed 5 days in a row. No schools opened this past week here in Indy because it was so bad. Well, and the reason it was bad is it was the temperature. So 12 inches of snow normally we could handle, but once you get 24 to 36 hours of -10-degree weather.
-24 on one day.
Yeah, it completely freezes everything, and so it wasn't until we got 40-degree rain yesterday that everything kind of melted away finally.
Which is crazy because it's like a 70-degree difference in less than a week.
Right.
And the salt just wouldn't work. We're prepared for anything if the salt works, but
I mean, we're not Buffalo, but Hoosiers do pretty well in the snow and the ice, and
most people know how to drive in the snow
right
around here.
At most, I remember IPS being closed 2 days in a row, and that's the Indianapolis Public Schools. That's the biggest school system here in Indianapolis, and so it's sort of the benchmark that everybody kind of uses. I mean, Plainfield, where Greg and I went, never was closed for more than 2 days.
No,
and it was closed all 5 days. So
same with Brownsburg, and Brownsburg would never cancel when I went there.
So it was definitely necessary. As somebody who was driving, I stayed home Tuesday and then went out Wednesday, and it was still pretty treacherous on Wednesday and Thursday. The thing that helped is that most people just were not on the road Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. My wife got 2 days off for the first time ever. Chase Bank, which has a huge operations center in multiple places across Indianapolis, closed down. And
FedEx was closed down Monday night,
which is extraordinary.
That's apocalypse bad.
Yeah, they are a supply chain, and supply chain does not go down.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, the new job's rubbing off.
Yeah, what a good little corporate minion you are.
Right.
No. It's not just FedEx.
I know, everybody.
I mean, when I was trucking, that was, you made sure the load got through. That's just how it worked.
I saw no semi-trucks on Monday at all. Barely any on Wednesday.
I saw some bad accidents with semi-trucks.
Yeah, I saw a jackknife when I was going to a friend's house.
I-65 from Chicago to Indianapolis was shut down for 3 days.
70
was shut down. 74 were shut down on Wednesday. Like it 69? 69 up to Chicago was impassable.
69 does not go to Chicago.
Oh, is it 60,
Toledo.
65 is what I'm thinking. But
practice round for an ice age.
So the reason most businesses shut down is because the mayor came out and he said, listen, it's a public safety issue. No one is allowed to be on the roads. If you're caught on the roads, then you will be fined $500. That happens a couple times a year, 3 times, 4 times a year in certain rural counties here in Indiana. So if you're in Brown County, for instance, which is very hilly, very elevated, they get a lot of snow. It's not uncommon when we have a snow for them to go red, which means you're caught driving, you're fined, and you're in trouble.
It's also heavily wooded, and there's a lot of roads that are just very county rural roads.
And so their thinking is you're putting our personnel, our police officers, EMS, in danger because they have to come out and save you. That rarely happens in Marion County, and it happened in all the surrounding counties, so 2.5 million people were just stuck in their homes for 2 days, maybe 3. So as libertarians, as a person, first and foremost, I didn't want to leave and go anywhere on Monday because I knew that it was dangerous and it was not good driving conditions, and I knew the risks when I left that I could get hurt or I could hurt someone else, or the worst event, I could get stranded at work and my car wouldn't start, and which is what ended up happening. And then
overtime.
And then I had to. Yeah, I'm salaried. Trust me. And then, so I had to put a friend's life in danger to make him take me home.
I had cabin fever. I'd have left the house anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't do
right.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it. I was already going nuts.
So most people, my wife, for instance, was begging Mayor about she would have voted for him for a 3rd term had he thrown the red again on Tuesday. But I think she ended up not making it in anyways. But what do we think about this? I mean, as a thinking person, I want as few people to be on the road as possible. I don't want to be on the roads, but if I have to go out on the roads like I did, I don't want you jackasses out there on the road trying to hurt me.
Well, I think part of it is it is a public safety issue. You don't like being dictated to by the government. I mean, it's a common sense thing, and you would hope that people would have enough common sense to not go out and drive.
How dare you?
But I mean, realistically, all I can think about is how is it possible that when we have all of the world's knowledge in our hand on a cell phone or a smartphone, readily accessible, we don't have anything that can just dump on snow and melt it?
It's a cost issue.
It's cost. I'm sure that, there was some guy who got arrested somewhere in Wisconsin or Michigan for using a flamethrower on his driveway.
I was thinking about trying to rig a flamethrower to a leaf blower and keep it just far enough out there that it would blow the heat and I could just mow down everything.
I had an interesting idea for clearing large amounts of snow and just letting the sun take care of it. You just get some sort of charcoal dust that has some sort of just sticky solution. You spray it out on top of the snow. So it just sticks, all this black dust sticks to it, and then the sun warms it up. It melts away, and then it ends up rotting away.
What about copious amounts of used motor oil? Just throw that right out on there and then light it on fire.
And then a controlled burn?
Right.
Yeah, we'll do a controlled burn.
Yeah. This guy, he did exactly what you were saying. He took out his flamethrower and he melted the driveway and the road in front of his house. And then his neighbors called a 911 in on him, and he's like, "It's worth it to spend the night in jail. My driveway's clear."
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to me. We have flamethrowers. We have all different kinds of technology. We have napalm.
Right.
There's got to be a way to water down napalm.
Well, I used a snowblower on my driveway, and it was still so bad that I would have preferred to use a flamethrower, knowing that I will go to jail.
But back to the original question: Do you have a problem with what the mayor did here in Indianapolis? Are there instances in this case where a local government should say, stay in your home because it's not safe enough for you to go out?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a difficult question from an anarcho-capitalist perspective.
Well, his perspective is that, listen, we've got to use city resources to come rescue your dumb ass when you go out and you get into an accident and you hurt somebody.
Yeah.
So you're costing the taxpayers money every time you disobey and go out there and...
Or have you paid for those services through your taxation over the years?
Right.
That's the real question.
Well, the big thing is when you ask an anarcho-capitalist that, it's kind of like saying, do we have a right to vote on what color the drapes are in the governor's mansion? You know, it's kind of an irrelevant question.
Well, I don't think it's an irrelevant question at all.
The framework isn't there because the roads do not have a legitimate owner. So from an anarchist perspective, those are held in common. So, in fact, there is no legitimate authority who can tell you what you can and can't do on a road from a moral perspective.
Explain why there is no legitimate ownership by the state over the roads.
Ultimately, the money that was used to build them is stolen.
Right.
Taxes are theft because they are not paid voluntary, and the only type of exchange that is legitimate is a voluntary exchange. So all those roads have been paid for using stolen funds. Therefore, those roads rightfully belong to the people who paid for them.
Right. An interesting note there, on Wednesday, I had to run over to one of our satellite offices, and I turned down Hawthorne Drive, whatever it is, Hawthorne Park Drive, which is a city street, and it may have been plowed once, but I highly doubt it. So I turned down Hawthorne Park Drive, and it looks like it hasn't even been plowed at all. And I'm like, all right, well, cool, because then I get to kind of pretend like I'm a dirt track racer and try to slide around the corners, which is always the best part about having an unplowed road.
Wheel real hard.
Exactly. And then floor it so I can try and get the buildup on the back of the front tires so that way I can kick it later so it falls off. Like, that's as satisfying as popping
very
a zip.
satisfying.
Yeah. Which, is it rude to do that to other people's cars? Like, I don't want to rob them of the satisfaction, but I really feel like I need to help them out by kicking that off. But
they snooze, they lose.
Yeah, Facebook apparently said that it was rude.
Snow is tragedy of the commons.
Right. So I turned the corner onto a private road, and I just burst out laughing because it's perfectly clear. And I took photos of it the next day when it still wasn't clear. It was the same exact way, and you can check that out at We Are Libertarians Facebook page. So you look at the difference. This private road, the guy only had one road to deal with, and he made sure that it was clear so he can protect his building's investment and his tenants by making sure that's clear. The public road, they're overwhelmed because they have so many to get to. So I don't know how any of this fits into the larger discussion. But
Here's
go check
the
that
question:
out.
Would you rather have it like it is now, where you have stolen? And stolen, it's kind of tough because when something's stolen from you, you no longer have access to its use, right? Mm-hmm. So,
well, not necessarily.
Well, like if a computer's stolen, you can't use it anymore.
Oh, that's kind of a little ambiguous. I mean, with Find My iPhone and cloud processing, you might actually still be able to use your computer remotely.
Yeah, but you don't have access to the money that is taken out of your taxes you have access to some of the things that are used for. You have access to streets. You have access to police.
Yeah,
It's more like a mandate.
My point is that just because something's stolen doesn't mean that stolen isn't defined by your lack of access to it necessarily.
No, you're right.
Your access will be reduced, but it has to do with something tangible taken away from you.
I mean, ideally, in the perfect society, we would all have, and it'd be anarcho-capitalist, and you would pay for the roads you wanted, and those roads would be cleared privately, and then you would you wouldn't be able to be dictated.
If the weather was bad and the owner of the road told you can't use it anymore, then you can't use it. But ultimately, when you have public property like that, that's taxpayer paid, then the government, theoretically in this circumstance, is only a steward. And to actually fine you and to commit an act of violence against you for using something that rightfully belongs to you is an atrocity.
Yeah, and I think that's where I come down on it as well. People know the risk. They know the risk of driving in that situation. I did, Greg did, Gena did, but we made that choice consciously. My wife did not make that choice. She did not go out. She refused to come pick me up. So,
my car was under 3 feet of snow because I parked on the street and the plow went by.
Me too. That sucked.
Yeah.
But I hate
streets.
staying in the home more.
I saw some streets in Indy where cars were parked on the sides and the plows either had to snow them in or to go around them. It was just a really interesting.
Well, knowing where you live in downtown Indianapolis, so
Not anymore. I moved.
Oh, okay.
I'm with my parents now. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to rub that in.
Yeah. Now it's on a public podcast.
What an a-hole.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks for getting that out there.
Dozens and dozens of us will judge you.
Yeah. You're being judged by.
I'll be the laughing stock of the We Are Libertarians.
Listen,
community.
you're on a libertarian podcast. There's a good chance that 78% of our listeners are in the same situation. So, all right. So resolved. Greg,
well,
go ahead.
In practicality, because like ideally, yes, we all agree what would be the perfect solution. Would you rather have the way it is now, or would you rather have it where instead of like it is now, sort of like healthcare, where it's mandated? You have to have insurance for this type of event for private services to come out and clear the roads and clear your property.
Well, I had AAA, which is, mutual aid society, essentially. And they were they were stretched too thin to come out and start my car on Monday or to come out and service it. But they had found, and what they were doing is they were going out and pulling people out of ditches that had slid in, but they did offer me a solution that said, listen, you can have a private service come out, and then you can apply for reimbursement, and then we'll pay you back. So things like AAA are exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. I mean, for snow removal of the streets, you had to have insurance or essentially payment that you're going to need that in the future, but it's mandated you have that.
Right.
Which would you prefer?
Well, the big thing is...
I'd prefer the one that works, which is the private solution versus the public solution. The fact that IPS was closed for 5 days is because Mayor Greg Ballard and the removal of snow here in Indianapolis was inadequate. It didn't work. It was poor, and they suck.
Well, your question is more, would you rather have more liberty or less liberty on a libertarian podcast? So I think I'll just make a comment instead of directly answer your question. Make a comment within the framework.
Which in and of itself is very libertarian of you.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not going to answer your question.
I'm not going to answer your question. I'm going to answer my own question.
I'm going to lecture you with my own intelligence.
I am so smart that I don't even think that your question was worded properly for me.
Go forth, young man.
The big thing is, in the current framework that we have, it is, from a practical standpoint, it is necessary to ban people from the roads in these circumstances as long as they feel that rescue is a right and not a service.
Right.
And until people start thinking of being rescued as a service rather than a right, then they're going to continue to do stupid things, expecting to be bailed out later.
That's a very good point. The fact is people feel they have a right to be rescued when they do something stupid. You look, every warning ahead of Katrina was, get out, this is going to be bad. And then there's still people who climb up on the roof.
John Stossel has a very good special that you can find on YouTube where this is back in his 2020 days. There's a bunch of people who, they hear warnings not to do something, they do it anyway, they get stranded, and it ends up costing the county thousands of dollars to rescue them because they need a helicopter and stuff like that. And the thing is, the counties where this happens the most in tend to be very rural, with a lot of natural beauty, that kind of thing, with a lot of rock formations and mountains and stuff, and a very, very small tax base.
Well, what just happened here is Ballard just applied for federal assistance to help pay for rescuing people and for the cost of the salt and the cost of the clearing and all the overtime. And so now listeners across the nation who do not live in the Indianapolis area and in Indianapolis proper are now helping to pay for all the people who chose not to be responsible, like myself and Greg and Gena. All right, so resolved the...
I mean, we didn't get in an accident.
Well, that's true.
And I was forced.
I didn't
That's
cost
right.
anything.
You guys are playing a numbers game.
I said, bitch, you're off the podcast if you don't come get me. And it means so much to him.
So he jumped.
I jumped. I dug out 3 feet of snow.
Yep.
Ice.
So resolved, the fact is that it was an overreach of the state, and we don't need your paternal instincts to protect us, to tell us what is correct, even though you think you control the roads. My roads!
And we're sacrificing innovation, because if it was privately done, I guarantee you they would have more effective solutions than what exists right now.
Well, the big thing that I like, being a truck driver gave me a lot more insight in how the road system works and how people are affected by it on a day-to-day scenario, day-to-day. And the big thing is, because we are so road dependent, there are a lot of people on the roads that are only there because they have to be, but otherwise are too uncomfortable with driving. And I think it's terrible that we have such a system that forces the people who shouldn't be on the road to be on the road. That causes highway deaths, that causes property damage, and we would probably have a better, well, for lack of a better term, public transportation system, even though it would be private, but we'd have a better transportation system overall.
Mass transit.
Mass transit, there we go. That's a much better term.
Yeah.
We'd have much better mass transit if we didn't have a government that would tax every other sector of the transportation industry in order to subsidize the auto industry.
The other aspect of the public road system is that you can use them for political retribution.
Oh, yeah.
So when you have public roads, there are politicians who then can go and close said roads when they feel that they have not been treated fairly. So Chris Christie is a 2016 contender, obviously the governor of New Jersey.
Well, I don't think anymore.
I don't know. I mean, it's who's shocked that a New Jersey politician has a political retribution scandal?
The thing is, though. I'll let you explain.
Let me explain
first.
what the context is. So we're all.
I'm just kind of foaming at the mouth trying to get into this one.
Yeah. So I wondered what was going on with your beard. So
Rabies,
right? In late August, early September, there was an email sent from one of the deputy governors of New Jersey to the New Jersey's the person that sits on the New York Transit Authority, because Jersey and Newark and New York City and New York are so intertwined and so connected and so dependent upon each other. They have a seat on the New York Transit Port Authority. And the Port Authority runs all the mass transit in the New York City area. And so the deputy governor, or whatever her title was, but deputy chief of staff maybe, sent a note to I think his name was David Weintraub, saying block part of the George Washington Bridge, which is a huge entrance. It's a huge bridge between New York and New Jersey, New York City and New Jersey. And so they took it from 3 lanes to 1, supposedly for a traffic study. And so as soon as Governor Christie saw that email and had heard that had taken place, he fired the Weintraub guy. He quit. He resigned like a month ago, and then the deputy chief of staff just got fired by Chris Christie. So that means that 2 more people have been let go, more than the Benghazi or
that's
or
the
the
thing
IRS
is,
scandal. So the thinking in the New Jersey press and the New York press and national media is that Chris Christie, because he was not endorsed by the mayor of Fort Lee in New Jersey, who is a Democrat, for re-election in late August, he apparently declined to endorse Christie. He shut down these lanes out of political retribution to put political pressure on the mayor of Fort Lee, which begs a few questions. Why would Chris Christie care if a Democrat endorsed him for governor at that late of a date? And second, why would it put political pressure if there were lane closures on the GW Bridge on the mayor of Fort Lee?
It was payback for not getting the endorsement.
Right, I understand that, but what if I'm driving on the George Washington Bridge and I'm stuck in crippling traffic? I don't sit there and shake my fists at the mayor of the local city.
Well, first of all, I like to say,
so I think I'm missing part of the story there. I don't quite understand.
They were also
those 2 points.
High school classmates.
Were they?
The mayor and him were high school classmates, and the mayor didn't endorse him, and Chris Christie has actually had a pretty good working relationship with the Democrats, the congressional Democrats in New Jersey.
Right.
He's been worked very hard to be bipartisan because there's no way to be a real conservative in New Jersey and get anything done.
The other part of it is in his epic 2-hour news conference the other day, he said that he doesn't know he wouldn't trip over he wouldn't know a traffic study if he tripped over it. The second part is he said he couldn't recall or didn't know the mayor of Fort Lee, and then a picture surfaced of the 2 of them. But I give him the benefit of the doubt on that one because having worked on a gubernatorial campaign, even at a libertarian level,
there's a whole lot of pictures of you.
There's a whole lot of pictures of you, and you meet a ton of people that you may not or may not necessarily recognize or remember. But if they're high school classmates, I'm sure that he does recall the name of the Fort Lee.
Then he says, David and I was the athlete and the jock, or I was the athlete and class president. I don't know what he was doing during those years.
Chris Christie
said that. Yeah, he was class president and he was an athlete, and so that was in his press conference. He says that, and I was like, that's just petty.
I think he's just. He's claiming to be an athlete. Come on, Chris Christie.
No, he was like a.
I had to take that shot at him.
Really, what happened is Chris Christie heard that there would be traffic jam, and he thought that sounded delicious.
Yeah. You also improperly used the term "beg the question."
How dare you? You're off the podcast. Take your skinny ass out of here.
The question is a circular argument. It's a logical fallacy where there's a circular argument.
Shut up.
Begging the question.
Shut up. Get off my podcast. Don't correct me.
I personally think it's irrelevant. I think the Democrats, especially the DNC, see Chris Christie as the biggest political rival to Hillary Clinton.
He is basically politics. Kanye West at that point when he's like, I was the president of the club, and
now he also was very sincere. He took it head on. The press corps or the people the journalists were very angry with him, and when he showed up for that interview, he stood up there for 2 hours, took full responsibility, said what he was going to do to rectify the situation, didn't budge or give an inch. He shut everyone down, and I thought it was actually a perfect example of a politician taking responsibility for messing up.
The thing is, Chris Christie is a moderate. He has like 60% approval ratings in New Jersey before this, and so he's a well-liked Democrat, or there's a Freudian slip, a well-liked Republican in a Democratic state who, if he were in the primaries, would be very well liked by the majority of people.
Well,
he will be well liked by independents, and so he is a true threat. And so they find a way to knock him out. At the same time, they get their own version of a Benghazi type scandal that now MSNBC can pile on and say, "Well, you say we're corrupt. Well, look at Chris Christie."
Well, it makes perfect sense that he would want endorsement from a Democratic mayor because I mean, New Jersey's fairly Democratic, and Chris Christie wants to come across as moderate. And that's the big hot issue is bipartisanship. Everybody's concentrating on trying to get the two parties together, and that's where Chris Christie's trying to come off across. But in this circumstance, he's coming off across as, a lot of Jersey stereotypes. And that's why I think this issue is going to disproportionately hurt his chances of making a run for the presidency, because not only does the stereotype already exist that these politicians are corrupt, but this is exactly something that would fit in that stereotype.
This is something Tony Soprano would do, and he's a Tony Soprano type politician.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I don't know if he had anything to do with this issue. I don't know if he didn't, but I'm just sitting back thinking, wouldn't it be great if this cost him the election?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, ultimately, this never happens if he doesn't have the kind of environment where his staff doesn't think they can take these risks.
But, okay, I was thinking about whether or not he knew. And the email is sort of damning. Here's this deputy deputy chief of staff or deputy lieutenant governor, or whatever her title is.
His number two.
And she sends an email to the Port Authority, an email, idiot, saying, make this happen.
Time for some traffic jams in Fort Lee.
Right. Time for some traffic jams. Where does she get the idea for that? Because when you're a number two, when you're in that situation, usually when you're high up like that, yeah, you're a pretty smart person, but you're also a very loyal person, because a very loyal person doesn't make it to that level of the trust tree with somebody like a governor. The chief of staff for the governor of Indiana, he's a very good guy, very smart guy, but he's not making that kind of decision without clearing it through the governor, at least talking to him. I don't buy for 1 second that Chris Christie had no knowledge of this whatsoever. He at least knew, and he at least had the opportunity to say, don't do that. So I think that it's a total load of bunk that he is innocent in all this.
But he has plausible deniability.
Exactly right, which is what you're always going for when you're at that level.
You can't hang somebody or kill somebody's chances. I mean, if plausible deniability doesn't exist, then Bill Clinton never gets elected after all the scandals he had. And
she's so loyal that she's going to say, no, he didn't know anything at all. And then it'll be made good when he gets her a nice job at a white shoe law firm or some PR agency or something.
If he becomes president, she'll get a job on K Street as a lobbyist.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I'm shocked you think he's done over it. I thought it was all kind of... One, he stood up there for 2 hours. I mean, that if he'd have done like a no questions press conference where he goes up there and says, here's what happened, I'm done, I'm not taking questions, that to me looks like guilty.
I just think he's done for the presidency, because even if New Jersey still likes him, which, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to lose his gubernatorial re-election, but... I mean, the rest of the nation, this is their impression of this guy.
But he is the biggest fundraiser for the RNC. Like, they fly him in here to give speeches to raise money for local candidates.
Susan Brooks is a local congressperson. She's very conservative. She's not real well liked by the Tea Party, but she certainly believes everything the Tea Party believes. She's your standard, run-of-the-mill Republican congressperson. She has them in all the time for fundraisers. Susan Brooks is also, her name is often circulated as maybe a potential vice presidential candidate.
You've got to be very careful when you're talking about money when it comes to politics.
I'm just saying...
what money is a gauge of is other people's confidence in your ability to win, which that generally is the effect that causes you to win an election. The fact that you have money and try to buy an election, that generally works against you, as we saw with Linda McMahon.
But see,
not in the presidential level, though.
Here's the problem.
No, the presidential level, if you try to buy the election, but the thing is, usually it's two rich people going at it anyway.
No, here's why I disagree. The difference between a Linda McMahon or a Mitt Romney and a Chris Christie is likability. Chris Christie is the type of guy that I don't like his politics, but I sure do like his style. He does seem like a guy that you'd want to hang out with.
The thing is, he's the incumbent. He's the multiple incumbent. People have a lot of confidence that he will win, so they give him money. And that's why money in that circumstance is a good indicator of his ability to win, because he's able to get that money through a third effect.
Right, but here's why he's not done. He has the likability factor of a Bill Clinton. He can rise above a lot of that. Bill Clinton, his scandals included possibly killing a guy in Vince Foster, Whitewater, all these other white things, including Linda McMahon or whatever her name was. Linda, what was Linda? What's her faces?
Paula Jones.
And Paula Jones and
Monica Lewinsky.
Lewinsky. Even before that, there was Paula Jones. There was the one that he had like a 17-year relationship with. So he had a million different scandals, but he was so darn likable that he rose above all of it. He was kind of Teflon. And Chris Christie is that kind of guy. He says, okay, I'm in trouble here. I'll go do a 2-hour press conference. And he has the confidence in himself to go out and give a 2-hour press conference. Whereas a Mitt Romney, it would have been incredibly tightly controlled. The message would have been tightly controlled. Barack Obama wouldn't have done a 2-hour press conference. This guy thinks so much of his abilities that he's willing to let shots be taken at him for 2 hours, and he comes out looking with just a couple little dents.
I don't know. Even when he's being honest, he still looks like a con artist.
Well, he's a politician.
It's your perception.
And keep in mind, this guy's a former prosecutor. He was a bundler for Bush. That's how he got the job as a prosecutor. Then he transitions that into being elected as governor of New Jersey, which hadn't had a Republican governor. God, I can't
Forever.
even. Yeah, and he comes in. He's well-liked. He takes on the toughest union in all of New Jersey, the teachers union. Usually people side with the teachers and government employees all the time, and somehow he takes them on, breaks them, and comes out smelling like a rose.
And wins re-election with
a landslide, 22%.
Right.
Okay, so my big question is, if Chris Christie gets elected as president, who wants to go start a rogue state with me?
He'll be no different than President Obama.
Right. Chris Christie is going to be no different, better, worse than George Bush.
Well, except that he's going to be more
liberal
vindictive than any previous
Well, this is
president.
certainly...
The IRS targeting?
Right.
Well,
that's 10 times worse than shutting down 2 lanes of a 3-lane road.
No, this is what he's willing to do on the gubernatorial level. Just think when this guy has access to nukes.
Yeah, this is totally maybe not nuclear weapons, but I'm saying this is definitely a Richard Nixon type move where he's seeking vengeance against his enemies.
Could it be worse than droning a Pakistani wedding?
Right.
Does it get much worse than that?
I just think that the only reason Chris Christie hasn't done that so far is lack of ability.
Right.
He doesn't have drones. How can he drone a wedding without drones? He needs to get
and
the
we're
drones
not arguing
first.
for Chris Christie. We're just saying that
You're playing devil's advocate.
He is the exact same type of politician as every other single one of these guys. And
I
gets
think he's a little
president.
worse.
So speaking of dirtbag presidential incumbents, let's talk about Rand Paul for just a moment, coming out and saying that I'm going to let you guys give an opinion while I look up the exact quote. But Rand Paul, I just have to say, people like Maya and some of the folks who say all the time, Rand Paul's not a true libertarian. He's just another Republican in libertarian's clothing. You kind of go, well... but he's better than most. You get Creighton's argument that, listen, he's the type of guy that, he does these certain things and they help our cause and he's friendly towards us. But
it's all about coalition building.
He just kind of comes out and does and says these things that you go, I don't really get it. Okay, so here's what Rand Paul said last week to ABC and CBS. Senator Rand Paul said he thinks Snowden should return to the U.S. to stand trial, and a penalty of a few years in prison would be sufficient punishment. Do I think that it's okay to leak secrets and give up national secrets and things that can endanger lives? I don't think that's okay, the senator said while appearing on This Week on ABC. But I think the courts are now saying that what we revealed was something the government was doing was illegal. I really think in the end, history is going to judge that he revealed great abuses of our government and great abuses of our intelligence community. And then he went on to face the nation saying, I don't think Edward Snowden deserves the death penalty or life in prison. I think that it's inappropriate. And I think that's why he fled, because that's what he faced. I think the only way he's coming home is if someone would offer him a fair trial with a reasonable sentence. So... then he goes on to talk about James Clapper Senator said, I don't think we can selectively apply the law. So James Clapper did break the law, and there's prison sentence for that. So did Edward Snowden, Paul told ABC. So I personally think he probably would come home for some penalty of a few years in prison, which would probably not be unlike what James Clapper probably deserves for lying to Congress, and that maybe if they served in a prison cell together, we'd become further enlightened as a country over what we should and shouldn't do. So, all right, so I certainly want full immunity and clemency for Edward Snowden, because he is an incredible hero in our nation's history for exposing and confirming all of the anti-Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and basically every other amendment of the Bill of Rights, exposing what the NSA is doing and has done. And, to the point that over Christmas break, we saw that they were intercepting shipped laptops and hard drives and putting on spyware on your laptop and your hard drive, going around the United States, not going out of the United States, but staying within the United States. So I've got this Seagate hard drive here. It could have NSA spyware on it, and I wouldn't know if it did or not. If
you order a laptop, make sure you wipe the hard drive before you start using it.
So Edward Snowden broke the law, as it is written, to expose these secrets and should be granted clemency for it, and should be allowed to move across the earth in any place that he'd like in perfect safety because he's a hero. That is my opinion, and probably the opinion of all the rest of you in the room here, I would say. Everyone's shaking their head, yes, Gena Bear?
You nod your head, yes. You shake your head, no.
You know what? You're really pissing me off. So, James Clapper...
I missed you, too.
James Clapper should be sitting in a jail cell for perjury, but because he is part of the power structure, he will not be charged with lying to Congress, and Edward Snowden would go to jail if he were in the United States. So my question, I'm going to beg a question of you, Dan Peffers. We'll start with you and go across the line here. Do you think that Edward Snowden deserves prison time? He broke the law. He knew he was breaking the law. That's why he fled. We are a nation of laws. We are supposed to uphold the rule of law here in the United States. Do you agree with Rand Paul that he should serve some prison time for what he did?
That's a very complicated question.
That's why I asked you first.
All right, but I've got an answer for you.
All right, good.
Aren't you thrilled to hear
That's
that
why
I
we have you
for you?
on We Are Libertarians.
All right, so ultimately, no, I don't think he should see any punishment ever for this. With that said, my advice to Edward Snowden, if he listens to this podcast...
I have no doubt he does.
Okay, yeah, he must be a libertarian, so he listens to We Are Libertarians. But anyway, my advice to Edward Snowden is just stay in Russia, because as soon as you get to if you ever try to get to the U.S. for a fair trial, and you're going to end up getting stabbed in the leg with an umbrella, and you're going to die of a mysterious illness a few days later.
But he broke the law. Do you think that he should see a trial for breaking the law?
Well, one, we're talking about different laws here. When I talk about law as an anarchist, I talk about moral law, natural law. This law is entirely artificial, and it only exists because there's a government with a monopoly of force. Now, what happens is it's very complex because he worked for a private firm that worked a contract with the NSA. And his contract said he would not reveal secrets. And this was brought up to me a number of times. He signed a contract of his own free will, and then he violates said contract. And he was not at any point under duress. So what is the moral reasoning for him to be able to do that? And I say it's because ultimately it's his company accepting stolen funds through taxation that makes the contract null and void, because the contract pertains to an illegitimate project that does perpetuate violence against the people of the U.S. So I believe very firmly that Edward Snowden was did legitimately break his contract because the contract was already broken and made through illegitimate means. With that said, a lot of libertarians are going to disagree with me because the big thing that libertarians believe that the government should be able to do is provide for the common defense. And if you're going to provide for the common defense, you need a military. And if you have a military, you necessarily have to have state secrets. And so I can see many libertarians having the idea that if somebody is divulging state secrets, but they're whistleblowing, the whistleblowing part should be a mitigating factor to a crime of divulging state secrets.
Greg Lenz.
He was not a government employee. He was a contractor of Booz Allen. If anything, I believe Booz Allen deserves restitution because they hired an employee who, in fact, violated his employment contract, knowingly damaged their ability to conduct business because he hurt their credibility. He deserves clemency, in my opinion, but I believe in the rule of law, especially in the United States. So I believe the best way to handle it would be to put it up for a national referendum. Put his clemency up for a national referendum and let Americans decide on a person-by-person basis, does he deserve to serve time in prison? Did he commit a criminal offense or did he not?
Yeah, but that's a lynch mob situation.
Yeah, but exactly.
But
And the whole point of the rule of law in a representative democracy, a republic like ours, is that referendums is democracy. And
direct democracy.
Right, and what we do here in America, or what we used to do and what we're supposed to do under the Constitution, is we're supposed to elect wise, intelligent, thoughtful, freedom-loving Americans to our
who happen to have a lot of money.
Right, who are, Gena threw me off my point, who take the best interest of our citizens and make decisions. And if we don't like those decisions, we throw them out because we exercise democracy at the ballot box. And referendums are the tools of socialists to implement direct democracy. So I couldn't disagree more. I absolutely hate the idea of any referendums.
I mean, if you broke a criminal, if you want, the problem with breaking the law is once you're outside the law, you're no longer protected by it. So if we're going to allow people to break the laws we have elected these wise leaders to implement for us, even if we don't disagree.
Let's clarify it. That's the way it's supposed to be.
And so,
Who
right.
did I elect who put all this EPA law in place?
Right.
And
if you can point to an elected official who put that in place,
Richard
I
Nixon.
would be
He created
the organization, but the thing is, appointed people were the ones who made the legal framework.
Yep, but you vote, or they
I
voted.
did not vote for Nixon.
You didn't.
And I did not vote for anybody that Nixon appointed.
Right. And philosophically, to quote Martin Luther King, an unjust law is unjust. Basically, at what point do we as Americans decide that we've had enough of the unjust laws that have been levied against us? And at what point do we decide that it's time to push back on our government that is pushing us in directions that we don't all want to go?
And to pick up on Gena's point, to give my perspective, I do agree with Rand Paul that Edward Snowden should face charges because he knowingly broke the law, and evidence that he knew he was breaking the law is the fact that he fled to Hong Kong. But I believe that we should educate every juror who goes into his trial about jury nullification, not voting to charge someone with an unjust law. So when a law is unjust, then you don't convict that person. You don't cast your vote for conviction based on the fact that it is an unjust law. So to take the Martin Luther King, to go back to the civil rights era, a black man goes in to use a white restroom and is charged for doing so. A member of the jury wouldn't convict him, even though he broke a law that was passed by a local body. He is not convicted for that crime because it is unjust. So that is essentially what jury nullification is. And if the jury doesn't exercise jury nullification, he should be granted full clemency based on the fact that he was protecting the United States of America.
So to use a Spangleism, you're begging a question here.
I'm going to kick your furry ass.
Anyway, I just... okay, so you gave a very reasonable answer for if we have a well-functioning court system, that he did break a law, he should answer to charges, but you hope that afterwards he ends up with a very lenient sentence or no sentence.
No sentence at all.
Okay, so let me change that question. Commentary aside, let's assume we're in this crazy, bizarro world where jurors are not very well educated on how to properly fulfill their duties, and they don't know anything about jury nullification, and that the prosecutors are gonna withhold evidence and all sorts of stuff, and it's gonna be a very corrupt trial. What would you say should be done with Snowden in that environment, which may or may not resemble reality?
I don't. If your scenario, if your hypothetical were exactly as is, then I would say exactly what you said, which is stay in Russia. But I believe that at this point, the Snowden case and Edward Snowden himself are so high profile that he would get a fair trial, that he can't be murdered just willy-nilly just because they can.
Bradley
Manning. High profile doesn't mean you can't be murdered. I mean,
Bradley Manning was not high profile because it was a military tribunal. It was not your average criminal court.
The crime was high profile, but by the time that court was in session, they found a way to keep it at the bottom of the barrel, publicity-wise.
You don't have the same rights in the military, and you can speak to this better than I can. You don't have the same rights in the military, especially when you're charged with high crimes and misdemeanors.
When it
comes
to an actual trial, there's a lot of similarities between military court and civilian court. There's still the same rights to an attorney. There's still a lot of the same procedural stuff.
Secondly, the difference between Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning is the fact that in Chelsea Manning's case,
the reason I say Bradley Manning is because at the time of the scandal,
sure,
it was Bradley
and it's what
Manning.
most people would identify. So once we've kind of done that, I want to respect Chelsea's wishes and say Chelsea.
Well, if I'm going to refer to Chelsea Manning since she became Chelsea Manning,
sure,
I'll use Chelsea Manning. But pre that period, I'm going to still use Bradley. Manning.
I absolve you. I'm doing the mark of the cross. You will not be
I just
yelled
don't
at.
want Maya showing up at my door, kicking my ass.
That's why I'm saying Chelsea. So Chelsea Manning leaked military secrets, leaked war crimes, and in our country, people have such a high opinion of the military that people don't want to. We have great nationalistic pride in our military, and people don't like anything that sullies the idea that every single soldier that we have is anything but an American hero. The fact is that most members of the military are great people, but there are bad apples that will murder and kill, and there are things like the My Lai massacre that happen in our history that are not great, and that is what Chelsea Manning exposed. What Edward Manning exposed is that your cell phone, your laptop... Edward Snowden exposed that your laptop, your hard drive, your cell phone is an agent of spying for the United States government on you. And so instead of hurting the juror or the member of the public in nationalistic pride, it hits them in their comfort zone, their privacy, their false sense of total security and privacy in our nation. And so it becomes much more of an OJ trial where everybody's paying attention, and the risk of getting let off is much higher.
But the Lee Harvey Oswald case was pretty high profile, and he still got shot point blank.
Yeah, but who is going to want to shoot Edward Snowden?
Like I said, it'll be an
other
umbrella
than James
stab.
Clapper.
It'll be an umbrella stab, and he'll just die mysteriously of an illness.
But I feel like when libertarians say that, that's like their own like science fiction, fantastical. Like they want to pretend that they live in a Ray Bradbury novel.
But the cards are stacked against us. Nobody can deny that. Look at the
Absolutely.
situation we're in.
Right.
There are people who do despicable things every single day for reasons we don't even understand. For example, there's an entire government force who's willing to spy on everyone who has a cell phone.
Right.
So, I mean, I would just have to say that it's naive to think that someone wouldn't attempt to take him out, if no other reason than to make an example of
I'm
him.
saying that at this point, if they were going to do that, they would have done that like in Hong Kong, or they would have done that before Hong Kong, because if everything that we have learned is true, which I have no reason to doubt, it's not like they didn't know that somebody was going to leak. I mean, but maybe he just had them fooled so well. I don't know.
The story, the early parts of the story was very entertaining. I felt, because it was catch me if you can, pretty much.
So
I just loved how he gave the slip on a bunch of reporters in Hong Kong. He pretended to leave, and he didn't, and all the reporters were on a flight to Russia that they couldn't get off of.
I know, I love that. See, it's not that I don't believe that Paul Walker could have been droned to death. I just don't believe that
Michael Hastings,
or that Michael Hastings is. It certainly is possible.
How about the only person that verified the president, the only Hawaiian state official that produced his birth certificate, and I'm not a birther,
right?
The only one that did died in a plane crash with 8 people. And only one died. The other 7 survived in Hawaii.
I mean, produced the birth certificate?
Yeah, he was in charge of the verification, because that didn't exist when the president was born there. That type of birth certificate did not exist.
Well,
so they had a Hawaii official record. This is the only person that verified it and vetted it.
I understand that it's like seeing Satan's face in the clouds of the falling towers.
I'm not talking about that.
There's a psychological effect of. We know that these things are possible, but is it actually true? It's a little conspiratorial for my taste.
Okay, I've got to respond to this.
I don't believe that Edward Snowden is going to come back for a trial and be murdered. Lee Harvey Oswald.
No. You're trying to paint this as a very tinfoil hatty scenario, like you're talking about seeing the face of Osama bin Laden and the smoke of the Twin Towers. No, I'm not talking about reporters who were a little inconvenient for the government suddenly getting into car crashes. I'm talking about major political targets. It is confirmed that like the Ba'ath Party in Iraq, we went after every single one of them. And if we had a chance to assassinate them, we did. And Snowden's kind of at that level where he's a major political target.
But it was okay to do that because
we started a war to get Gaddafi too.
You have to think about public sentiment. Okay, that's what you're not factoring in, and that's what I'm saying. Is
public
that
sentiment was against the war in Libya. It didn't matter.
I know, but people didn't necessarily like Gaddafi. People didn't like bin Laden. People didn't like the members of the Ba'ath Party. The fact is people like what Edward Snowden did because now they know that their cell phone could be spying on them.
I don't think that whether people like him or not is really relevant at this point.
I certainly do. I think absolutely
at this point,
because that
he's
would
such
be
high profile.
Because that would be the match that just absolutely sets the tinderbox on fire. People are against it, and then if he were to suddenly disappear or show up dead, then all of a sudden nobody's going to believe that it was an accident. So no matter how much you stage it, I would imagine that Secret Service or CIA is protecting his life at this point.
No.
Because if something like Edward Snowden turned up dead, it would absolutely inflame the entire debate again and absolutely end all of the NSA's secure programs.
I am surprised they did not shoot the airplane he took from Hong Kong to Moscow. Just out of the sky.
I'm just saying, if he had shown up dead,
I am shocked that they did not shoot it out
but then
of
you've
the
got
sky.
an international
They
outcry.
at some point they were probably over international waters, and the plane would have just gone straight into the ocean.
Right, but if you're China and one of your planes leaving from your country going to Russia is shot down over an American citizen who
You
broke
mean a
American
plane full
law.
of tourists?
Well, whatever flight he was on.
I just don't think that the Chinese government cares much about a plane full of tourists.
All right, Greg has been trying to get in here.
Oh no, I mean, public opinion's the only thing keeping. There's two things: public opinion, sentiment's on Edward Snowden's side, and that's why I think a national referendum would protect him for clemency. The other, because I don't think there's any legal way to avoid. Like, no president or no political person is going to run on giving Edward Snowden clemency, and that will be something he can win on. No Republican will do it. No Democrat will do it. Doesn't exist. That's a contender.
But I don't understand why Rand Paul. I don't understand why that is that way frankly.
Because Rand Paul has to. It's the politics. Rand Paul has got to be a Republican to become president, and so he has to talk Republican. He has to walk the tightrope. I mean, I asked his dad point blank at DePaul. I said, "What is the difference between you and your son and your beliefs?" He said, "There isn't one. He believes in tactics. I'm more of just a pure strategy guy."
I just don't.
And I take his dad at his word.
Right.
And the big thing is, I totally understand Rand's position, because Rand is not a anarchist like I am. And I don't think that this is, this contradicts my beliefs, but I don't think this contradicts his beliefs. I think that he can fully believe in the idea of maintaining national security and maintaining law and order if he believes that if he believes that the government's rightful duty is to provide for the common defense. The only reason I don't believe that that's a legitimate point of view is because I don't believe that the government's role is to provide for the common defense.
Well,
I don't believe the government has a role.
But that misses the whole point. How do you get someone clemency? You have to be president.
Right.
You have to be a president that has a
So
spine.
what are you going to do? Give yourself the best chance at becoming president if you believe something and granting them clemency, because otherwise the whole point's moot. Unless you have a national referendum.
So you're just another scumbag politician that lies about their beliefs. Well, fine.
I don't think he's lying, though. That's the thing.
I think he is. I think he's playing the game. He's walking a tightrope, because if you want to be president and you want to influence change, you have got to be willing to play the game that exists.
I don't disagree that he's playing the game. I think that he's playing the game a lot better than his father did.
His dad was revered, and he was a Republican.
Yeah,
right.
But
I'm of the mindset that people like Ron Paul are going to be more revered than people like Rand Paul, because people are looking for a spine. That's why Chris Christie is liked, and that's why Chris Christie can win in a landslide in New Jersey, is because the guy's not a pussy. And a politician that stands up and says exactly what they think and exactly what ought to be done is going to rise to the top like a Barry Goldwater, and even if they're not successful, then people will still rally around that person and they'll start a movement. That's why Ron Paul can start a movement, and Rand Paul is rejected by half of the people who should naturally support him, is because he's a pussy. And I'm just tired of scumbag politicians who say one thing and believe another, even if they're on my team. I'm just over it. And
I know.
I'm tired of making excuses for, you got to play the game, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I understand Creighton, that if Creighton were here, Creighton would say, well, then how do you get the filibuster on drones? How do you get that national conversation started? How do you get drug reform if somebody like Rand Paul isn't in the Senate working with a Cory Booker? Well, I understand your point, but at the same time,
I don't like it.
Right.
I mean, you have to be agnostic. You have to say, what gives Edward Snowden the best chance at clemency?
Yeah. And the big thing is, I don't like playing the game. I've never liked playing the game. I don't plan on playing the game. But I will build coalitions with people who do play the game. I will take the stuff that they have worked hard to get, the prestige, the power, the influence, and I will partner with them to use that as my own without having to contradict my own values.
But don't you feel like that's a little like that saying that just because you don't have an interest in politics, politics has an interest in you?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, the reason I have an interest in politics is in hopes that someday I won't have to have an interest in politics.
Oh, agreed. I totally agree.
I'm just saying that you don't have Rand Paul if you don't have Ron Paul.
Yep.
Literally. And you don't have Rand Paul getting elected Senator of Kentucky if it weren't for his father's backbone of 30 years and starting and people having respect for somebody who says exactly what they believe. And so I think it's a wrong-headed argument to say, well, without Rand Paul, we wouldn't have these sorts of things. Well, you wouldn't have Rand Paul if it weren't for somebody who wasn't a pussy. So, and I'm going to start using that phrase more because we got to start calling the pussies out.
The martyr's
right?
important.
Am I right?
You're exactly right. Yeah. And the martyr's important.
Good. I call pussies out all the time.
High five. High five. Yeah.
I do.
Pussy Patrol. Me and Gena. High five.
I do like the skepticism of Rand, because the thing is, Rand is not a perfect libertarian, and I'm not going to judge him for not being a perfect libertarian. But the thing is, if he's not a perfect libertarian, and there are some issues where you have to depart from him. There's some issues where you're going to have to fight him on. And a healthy skepticism is going to give you the ability to tell when those times are.
I will say
with every
that
politician.
I don't think you can be an elected official in this current environment and be a perfect libertarian. I think that if you're running for office, and so here's where I contradict myself. Okay, I don't believe that somebody like Rand Paul or even Ron Paul could be a perfect politician. Even Ron Paul gave away massive amounts of pork in his district to make sure that he was continually reelected. And he had his reasons, first and foremost saying, well, I don't want to give this money up to the president to decide how it's allocated. I'd rather give it to my district. Okay, fine. But, it's tough to be a perfect libertarian and be an elected member of any body because you're going to be forced. Politics is the art of compromise. You're going to be forced to compromise on certain things to get what you want. So that's why people like Maya make the argument, how can you get rid of the state if you are a part of the state?
Yeah, well, one of the things about... I just want to touch on pork real quick.
I bet you do.
Clearly not a Muslim or a Jew.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a chubby chaser, by the way. But to touch
Look
on
out,
the
Greg.
subject... I noticed that this is a kind of a narrow couch here.
Yeah. So you're getting a little
And he's looking
close.
quite svelte.
Right.
Yeah. I've been getting into shape recently.
Can I go out to Greg's afterwards? Hunt
So-
down,
Not
Anyway.
that there's anything wrong with that.
hunt down a couple bears. Now that you're starting to slip in from bear to otter territory.
Yeah, where I've got to use my craftiness.
All right. Greg's,
man, I
by the
love
way,
that shit.
Gina, would you like to explain what Greg's is?
Greg's is the
Greg's is a local gay bar here, full of bears.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't act like you don't know Peppers.
No, I'm unaware of this. I do not know the gay bar scene, but sometimes I do enjoy free drinks.
We only know it. We only know it because Gina got into a foam pit there at Greg's, and
I love Greg's. It's one of my favorite places.
that's
to
her
hang
hang.
although the smell of her feet have never been the same since.
out. Right.
Okay, so all right, let's wrap up.
I want to touch
One
on
last
pork.
point.
That's
Touch on
where
pork.
that's where all these jokes came from.
Right.
I'm going to defer to a thing that Dr. Walter Block told me when I met him, and that is the money is already stolen. You're just taking your cut. You cannot steal from a thief.
Right.
And so I definitely agree with Ron Paul's position of if the money's already taken, you want to get it back to as many of your people as possible. So
Right.
you need to grab your cut, give it back to the people, so that way the effects of taxation are not as readily felt by the innocent.
Okay. All right, so let's wrap up here at the end. Let's talk about whatever we'd like to talk about. Get up on your soapbox, Dan Peppers.
Well, there's a website on the internet that gives you a list of logical fallacies, so you can find out things like begging the question and ad hominem.
It's called 4chan. Go visit there often, especially the random board. It's the numerical 4chan.org.
No, that's not the site. What you want to go to is lemonparty.org.
No, don't do that. Don't go to Blue Waffle
I have a
either.
feeling that'll be edited out.
Stay out of the bluewaffle.com.
I don't mess with the underbelly of the internet. I have
Yeah.
no idea what's happening.
Do not go to Faces of Death.
I
No.
have been to places and I have never been the same
Right.
since.
Why do these exist? What's wrong with us as human beings?
I think it's the fact that
Human beings are just terrible.
I think it's curiosity.
Why, though?
I think it's the same sick curiosity that made you want to go see like The Bearded Woman or,
Yeah. If you want to find
But
out
looking at a bearded woman